NDEs, or near-death experiences, are something I think people have to experience for themselves to truly understand. They're so varied and unique, yet lots of people claim to go to a warm, comfortable place, a place they don't want to leave. They talk to long-dead family members that tell them it's not their time. Religious experiencers sometimes see angels and other religious symbols. Some even have negative, frightening NDEs. There doesn't seem to be as much data about these types of NDEs, but the fact that they're distressing may make people less inclined to talk about them. Now, you might think that believers in a higher power are more susceptible to the mystical and would be more likely to have an NDE, but it seems like anyone can have them, church-going or not. One question I have is whether or not there's some type of cultural contamination element to all this. Similar to how some researchers think that reports of alien abductions and encounters are influenced by entertainment and news media. Could past accounts of NDEs and one's own religious beliefs influence these experiences? One of the earliest known professional documented cases of an NDE is described in a book titled Anecdotes de Médecine by Pierre-Jean du Mongeau, who was a military doctor in France. The experience took place in 1740, Paris. The patient was ill with a fever, and in his declining state described a bright light, one so pure that he thought he was in heaven. He recalled that he had never had a nicer moment in his life. Now, this definitely isn't the first near-death experience ever recorded, as ancient cultures routinely talked about these transformative events in their religious and spiritual texts. But it is, for now, the first NDE recorded by a medical professional in a Western country. So, could this event have been influenced by records of NDEs from ancient cultures, or was this a completely unique experience brought on by something outside of the observer? It's hard to tell. Another category of experiences that are super fascinating to me, and sometimes similar to NDEs, are ones of a psychedelic nature. DMT is found in many plants and animals, including the rat brain, and in human cerebrospinal fluid, and when ingested has been said to produce experiences similar to NDEs. This has led some researchers to hypothesizing that the body dumps DMT into the brain when it thinks it's dying. The reason the brain would do this is unclear, but it could be some sort of defense mechanism. I think it's important to note that the type of DMT I'm talking about here is NN-DMT, not 5-MeO-DMT. They are similar substances, but produce different effects. The NN-DMT experience is the one you usually hear about when people say they've done DMT, getting blown into another dimension, lots of colors, fractals, and even sometimes encounters with strange beings. 5-MeO-DMT experience is usually described as a dissolution of the entire being, mental and physical, strong ego death, and becoming one with the universe. NN-DMT trips are most similar to NDEs because most people retain a part of themselves and experience visions and hallucinations that are realer than real, just as some who have a brush with death describe. I think psychedelic trips are important to understanding NDEs. But when on any psychedelic drug, your brain is still functioning and active, unlike a true NDE, so they can be more easily explained by science. Skeptics assert that NDEs are just the brain dying and trying to grasp onto what little it has left. But I would argue that for a person to experience a real NDE, they would have to be completely dead. No brain activity, no cardiac activity. In this case, NDEs said to have occurred under general anesthesia or while unconscious wouldn't count. So if there's no brain activity, nothing to produce dreams or hallucinations, how do people still have these experiences? I have a theory. We know that DMT distorts time and space for the user. So what if there are DMT dumps into the brain right before we die, and the feeling of going into another place, another dimension, is a person experiencing this androgynous DMT trip in a few seconds, which to them seems like hours. The brain even seems capable of distorting time and space like this by itself, with dreams. Ever had a dream that seemed like it was really long, but you were only asleep for 20 minutes? Maybe everything you experience during an NDE is at the beginning of the event, and then, when your brain does shut off completely, you just experience the normal unconsciousness associated with no brain activity. Obviously, just a theory, and I'm not claiming it as my own because somebody has probably come up with the same idea. Some interesting but not yet proven data suggests that some people have what are called veridical NDEs. This is referring to when a person is having a near-death experience and they're able to recount things that happen away from their body, with there being no way for them to hear or see what's going on. Outer body experiences, or OBEs, are similar to veridical NDEs and have been studied in the past. Robert Monroe of the Monroe Institute, famous for popularizing OBEs, has conducted several experiments on these types of experiences. One series of experiments with Mr. Monroe was carried out between September 1965 and August 1966. The first 7 nights of the test were unsuccessful, but on the 8th night, during a brief out-of-body experience, Monroe was able to see people he didn't recognize in an unknown location. This obviously proves nothing, but during the second OBE of the night, Monroe, quote, reported he couldn't control his movements very well, so he did not report on the target number in the adjacent room. He did correctly describe the laboratory technician was out of the room, and that a man, later identified as her husband, was with her in a corridor. Again, this doesn't really prove anything, but eventually, a few years later in 1968, Monroe was able to allegedly move out of his body, travel to a different room, and read a target number on a shelf that was put there by the facilitators of the test. I don't know how accurate this account is, but it does show some fascinating ways OBEs can be studied and scrutinized for more info, especially regarding NDEs, as some patients report that when near death, they feel as though they are floating away from their body. Near-death experiences are extremely complicated, as well as intriguing and even life-changing. I don't know if science will be able to fully explain why and how they happen anytime soon, but one thing's for sure, they are occurring, and they do have an impact on the people who experience them. Thanks for watching this video and supporting the channel. I would like to hear your theories and ideas on NDEs, and if you think they're stemming from the brain or some other outside force. As always, like, comment, and subscribe, as it does help out the channel. Thanks.